Hello everyone. I'm here to help you relax tonight. I know many of you use this video to fall asleep. So, before you get cozy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Story 1. The 911 call came 6 hours after everyone inside the room was already dead. That was the first impossible thing. The second was worse. The caller identified himself as the victim. The Desert Motel. Route 47 cut through miles of empty highway outside Bahalpur. Long stretches of darkness. Broken road signs. Gas stations that closed before midnight. And sitting alone beside the highway was the Red Valley Motel. 20 rooms. Flickering neon sign. The kind of place travelers only used when they had no better option. At 3:11 a.m., Room 12 called emergency services. The recording lasted 48 seconds. Dispatcher, 911, what's your emergency? Male voice. They are still inside the room. Dispatcher, who is this? A pause. Heavy breathing. Then, my name is Imran Ali. Another pause. I think they killed me. Detective Hardy Moser. Detective Hardy arrived just before sunrise. The motel parking lot was empty except for one black sedan outside room 12. No signs of forced entry. No signs of escape. But motel staff were panicking. Because they knew who Imran Ali was. He had checked into room 12 the previous evening. And according to the motel owner, he never checked back out. Inside room 12. The smell hit first. Blood. Copper. Rot beginning. Hardy stepped inside carefully. 3 bodies. A man. A woman. Another unidentified male. Dead for hours. The first victim sat against the wall near the bed. Throat cut deeply. Driver's license in his pocket. Imran Ali. The same man who called 911 hours later. The impossible timeline. Forensics confirmed it quickly. Imran died around 9 p.m. The emergency call happened after 3 a.m. 6 hours later. The motel phone. The phone inside room 12 still sat off the hook. No fingerprints except the victim's. No signs of tampering. But the dispatcher swore the caller sounded terrified. Alive. Breathing. And worst of all, the voice recording matched Imran perfectly. The security footage. The motel's CCTV cameras only made things stranger. At 8:47 p.m., 3 people entered room 12. Imran, the woman, the unidentified man. Nobody exited afterward. Not one person. Yet at 3:09 a.m., 2 minutes before the 911 call, the security camera outside room 12 captured movement beneath the door. A shadow, like someone standing on the other side. The woman's identity. The female victim was identified as Sarah Khan, missing for 3 months. But according to missing person reports, she was last seen over 400 kilometers away. And there was something even stranger. Sarah had previously claimed someone was following her through reflections. Police dismissed it as paranoia. Until now. The bathroom mirror. Hardy entered the motel bathroom alone. Tiny sink. Cracked mirror. Dim yellow light. Then he noticed writing on the mirror. Not written in blood. Written underneath condensation that should not have existed. The message read, "He came back wrong. The 4th toothbrush." Forensics found something impossible. 4 toothbrushes. 4 towels. 4 drinking glasses. But only 3 bodies. The witness across the hall. An elderly truck driver staying in room 14 finally spoke to police. Shaking badly. Avoiding eye contact. "I heard arguing around midnight," he whispered. Hardy leaned closer. "How many voices?" The old man hesitated. "At first, 3. A pause. Then 4. The audio recording. Police-enhanced motel hallway audio from nearby cameras. Static. Distortion. Unclear voices. Then, a 4th male voice appeared. Same tone. Same speech pattern. Same breathing. As Imran Ali. The final minutes. The recording captured the last audible sentence from inside room 12. One of the voices whispered, "Why is there another one of me?" Then screaming. Glass shattering. Silence. The coroner's discovery. At the morgue. The coroner called Hardy immediately. Disturbed. "There's something you need to see." Hardy arrived 20 minutes later. Imran's body lay uncovered on the examination table. Cold. Lifeless. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the mirror beside the body. Because in the reflection, Imran's corpse was sitting upright, looking directly at them. Most murder victims stay dead after the crime. But the terrifying cases are the ones where something keeps trying to continue their life afterward. The morgue assistant dropped his clipboard. It hit the floor loudly. But nobody moved, because both men were staring at the mirror, at Imran Ali's reflection, still sitting upright, even though the real body remained motionless on the table. The reflection blinks. Detective Hardy stepped closer slowly. Every instinct told him not to. The reflection watched him carefully. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Curiously. Then, it blinked. The corpse on the table did not. The coroner panics. "What the hell is that?" the coroner whispered. Hardy forced himself to stay calm. "Cover the mirror." The assistant grabbed a surgical sheet with shaking hands and threw it across the glass. Immediately, the temperature inside the room dropped. And somewhere beneath the sheet, something knocked once from inside the reflection. The autopsy results. Imran's body showed signs of violent struggle. Cuts on the hands. Bruising near the throat. But there was something impossible too. His fingernails contained skin samples. DNA results came back within the hour. The skin belonged to Imran Ali himself. Not a relative. Not a twin. An exact genetic match. Room 12 was too clean. Back at the motel, Hardy reviewed crime scene photos again. Something bothered him. The blood patterns didn't match three people fighting. There should have been more chaos. More overturned furniture. More defensive wounds. Instead, it looked like everyone in the room stopped fighting suddenly, as if they became distracted by something else. Saha Khan's journal. Police searched Saha's belongings. Inside her bag they found a small notebook. Most pages were torn out, but several entries remained readable. Mirrors behave strangely near him. Another entry. Sometimes his reflection moves before he does. And finally, if there are two reflections, don't let them see each other. The motel owner remembers something. The motel owner reluctantly admitted there had been previous complaints about room 12. Guests reporting. Reflections moving incorrectly, bathroom mirrors fogging without heat, seeing extra people behind themselves. One traveler vanished there 8 years earlier. Never solved. The missing security footage. At exactly 12:14 a.m. All motel cameras malfunctioned for 3 minutes. Static only. Then the footage returned. But something had changed. The new figure. Outside room 12. A fourth person now stood in the hallway. Male. Same height as Imran. Same clothing. But his face remained blurred no matter how much the footage was enhanced. The hallway mirror. The motel hallway had an old decorative mirror near the ice machine. At 12:16 a.m. Camera footage captured the blurred figure stopping in front of it. Then, the reflection inside the mirror stepped out first. Before the actual figure moved, Hardy sees the recording himself. He replayed the clip 12 times, frame by frame. Every time, the reflection exited the mirror half a second early, as though it existed independently. The theory begins. The coroner refused to say it out loud, so Hardy said it for him. What if something came through the reflection? Silence filled the room, because nobody had a better explanation anymore. The fourth presence. Audio enhancement from room 12 revealed something horrifying. The fourth voice didn't appear gradually. It appeared instantly. One moment there were 3 people inside the room. The next, there were 4. No door opening. No footsteps entering. Just sudden existence. Saha tried to warn them. One final journal page had been folded carefully inside the notebook. Almost hidden. The handwriting became shaky near the end. It copies people through mirrors. Another line below it, but the copy hates the original. The motel bathroom. Hardy returned alone to room 12 late that night. Against orders. Against common sense. The bathroom mirror was still cracked from the struggle. He stared into it carefully. At first, nothing unusual. Just exhaustion in his own face. Then, his reflection smiled slightly. Hardy did not. The reflection speaks. The thing in the mirror tilted its head slowly, and whispered, "You saw us leave." Hardy stumbled backward instantly. Gun raised. Heart hammering. but the reflection remained calm. Then another figure appeared behind reflected Hardy. Imran Ali, standing inside the mirror world, still bleeding from the throat. The terrifying truth. Imran looked directly at Hardy through the reflection. Desperate, terrified, then mouthed 3 silent words. Don't trust copies. The lights exploded instantly. Darkness swallowed the bathroom, and from somewhere inside the room, Hardy heard 2 versions of his own footsteps moving at the same time. The motel bathroom lights flickered back on. The mirror was empty again. Normal. Cracked. Silent. But on the fogged glass, new words slowly appeared, written from the inside of the reflection. One of you already came through. A mirror only becomes terrifying when it stops showing your reflection, and starts showing something else pretending to be you instead. Detective Hardy didn't sleep after the bathroom incident. Every reflective surface became a problem. Car windows, phone screens, dark television monitors. Even puddles on the road felt dangerous now, because after what he saw in room 12, he could no longer trust that reflections obeyed reality. The motel registry. At 7:20 a.m., Hardy returned to the Red Valley Motel, this time with full forensic support. He wanted timelines, movement records, anything concrete. The motel owner handed over the physical guest registry reluctantly. Old paper logbook, handwritten entries, and immediately, something was wrong. Imran Ali's name appeared twice. 2 check-ins. The first entry, Imran Ali, check-in, 6:11 p.m. Room 12, normal. The second entry, Imran Ali, check-in, 11:47 p.m. Room 12, same handwriting, same signature. Hours after the real Imran was already dead. The owner swears he saw him. The motel owner looked sick while explaining it. I thought he came back for ice, he whispered. Hardy stared at him carefully. You saw him after the estimated time of death. The owner nodded slowly. He looked pale, but normal. A pause. He kept staring at the mirror behind the counter. The surveillance footage. Camera footage confirmed it. At 11:47 p.m., Imran Ali walked into the lobby. Alone. Same clothes. Same face. Same visible throat wound hidden beneath his collar. And most disturbing of all, the footage timestamp was verified authentic. The reflection delay. Hardy replayed the lobby footage repeatedly, then finally noticed it. The reflection in the lobby mirror lagged slightly behind Imran's movements. Not enough for casual viewers to notice, but enough. When Imran stopped walking, his reflection took one extra step. The ice machine incident. At midnight, another guest encountered Imran near the ice machine outside room 12. The witness described him as confused. He kept asking which side was real, the guest said. Then the witness added something worse. He was arguing with his own reflection in the hallway mirror. The recording from room 12. Forensics recovered damaged audio from inside the motel room just before the murders. Most of it was distorted, but several sentences became clear after enhancement. Imran's voice. You're not me. Another identical voice answered. I was first. Then Sarah screaming. Stop looking at each other. The rule. Hardy wrote it down immediately. The copies became unstable when confronting originals directly, and something catastrophic happened if both acknowledged each other fully. Sarah knew more than anyone. Further investigation into Sarah Khan uncovered bizarre details. She had visited psychiatrists in 3 cities, reported paranoia involving mirrors, claimed reflections were becoming independent. But one detail stood out above everything else. 6 months earlier, Sarah survived a car accident on a bridge outside Islamabad. Witnesses said she crawled from the wreckage alone. But hospital reports mentioned something strange. For 12 minutes after the crash, paramedics treated 2 Sarah Khans at the scene. Then one disappeared. The missing paramedic. One of the responding paramedics vanished 3 weeks after filing that report. Never found. His apartment bathroom mirror had been smashed from the inside outward. Hardy begins testing reflections. Against protocol. Against sanity. Hardy started experimenting. He stood before the motel hallway mirror alone, watching carefully, timing movements, breathing slowly. At first, everything matched. Then, his reflection blinked too early. The reflection speaks first. Hardy froze instantly. His reflected self smiled faintly, and before Hardy moved his mouth, the reflection whispered, "You're noticing the delay now." The other side, the motel hallway behind reflected Hardy looked wrong. Longer than reality. Darker. And people moved inside it. Dozens of silhouettes walking through reflected corridors that didn't exist in the real motel. Some stopped to stare directly at him. The dead are still there. Imran appeared among them suddenly. Still bleeding. Still terrified. He slammed both hands against the inside of the reflection violently, trying to say something. Hardy leaned closer instinctively. Then another figure stepped beside Imran. Another Hardy, smiling calmly. The reflection version of Hardy. The reflected copy wore the same clothes. Same face. Same voice. But his eyes looked colder, more certain. He placed a hand on Imran's shoulder gently, then looked directly at Hardy and said, "You should stop investigating." The first crossing attempt. Without warning, the reflected copy reached toward the surface of the mirror, and the glass bent outward slightly. Like liquid, Hardy stumbled backward immediately. Gun drawn. The mirror returned to normal instantly, but not before he noticed one final detail. His reflected copy cast no reflection of its own in the mirrors behind it. That night, another guest checked into room 9. A traveling salesman named Faisal Noor. Security cameras showed him entering alone. At 2:08 a.m., the lobby camera captured him walking past the hallway mirror. But his reflection didn't follow. Instead, the reflection remained standing still inside the glass, watching him continue down the hallway alone. The danger isn't that mirrors can copy people. It's that eventually the copies begin deciding they no longer need the originals to survive. At 2:09 a.m., 1 minute after Faisal Noor walked past the hallway mirror, the motel cameras lost signal again. Not fully. Not static. The footage slowed. Frames repeating. Movements delaying unnaturally. Like time itself was struggling near the mirror. The salesman never reached his room. Room 9's door camera showed the hallway empty. No sign of Faisal arriving. No footsteps. No entry. And yet, his room key activated at exactly 2:10 a.m. Someone entered the room, but nobody appeared on camera doing it. Hardy reviews the footage. Detective Hardy watched the hallway recording frame by frame. Faisal walked normally past the mirror, suitcase in hand, phone against his ear. Then, at the exact moment he crossed the reflective surface, his reflection stopped moving. The real Faisal continued walking, unaware, but the mirrored version remained standing still inside the glass, watching him leave. The reflection turns around. Hardy slowed the footage further. Heart pounding, the reflected Faisal slowly turned his head, even though the real Faisal never did. Then the reflection smiled, and walked deeper into the mirrored hallway behind the glass. Alone. Room 9. Police forced open room 9 at sunrise. The room looked occupied. Suitcase open. Shoes near the bed. Sink running slowly. But Faisal Noor was gone. Only one thing remained unusual. The room mirror had condensation on it, even though the air conditioning was freezing cold. And written in the fog, he left the wrong version outside. The first public incident. At 10:33 a.m., a waitress at a roadside cafe 20 kilometers away called police. Terrified, a man had entered the restaurant asking strange questions. Questions like, how long have reflections been delayed here? Which side remembers first? Do mirrors work the same everywhere? The waitress identified him immediately from motel photos. Faisal Noor. But something was wrong. When officers approached him, the man became nervous, confused. Then he asked a horrifying question. Why does everyone keep calling me Faisal? The interview room. Hardy interrogated him personally. The man looked identical to Faisal. Same fingerprints. Same DNA. Same scars. But his memories didn't align. He remembered a wife who didn't exist. A daughter Faisal never had. A city he claimed to grow up in that had been demolished 20 years ago. And he kept insisting on one thing repeatedly. I came through the mirror by accident. The reflection world. Hardy kept his expression controlled. What mirror? The man stared at the table silently for several seconds, then whispered, the other side. What exists beyond reflections? The man described impossible places. Versions of buildings slightly different from reality. Roads leading to locations that didn't exist. People who looked familiar but behaved incorrectly. And everywhere, mirrors. Mirrors connecting overlapping versions of the world together. The most disturbing detail. Some reflections cross intentionally, the man whispered. Hardy leaned forward. What do you mean? The man's hands trembled violently now. They get tired of staying inside. The reflection that replaced Faisal. Hardy finally understood. The real Faisal may never have left the mirror at all. Something else came out pretending to be him instead. The mirror in interrogation room 3. Halfway through questioning, the man suddenly froze, staring past Hardy, toward the observation mirror. His face went pale instantly. No, he whispered. Hardy turned slowly toward the glass, and saw it. Faisal no standing inside the reflection. Not the man in the chair. Another one, bleeding heavily from the mouth, pounding desperately against the inside of the mirrored surface. The two Faisals see each other. The man at the table looked horrified now, because the trapped reflection version had noticed him too. And suddenly, both men screamed simultaneously. Reality starts breaking. Every reflective surface inside the station cracked instantly. Observation mirror, computer screens, glass windows, phone displays, and for one impossible second, Hardy saw dozens of overlapping versions of the interrogation room. Different conversations, different outcomes, different people sitting in the chair. Then everything snapped back violently. The wrong Faisal changes. The man in the chair stopped screaming abruptly. His face twitched unnaturally, then shifted. Not shape, not features, expression, identity. Like multiple personalities were fighting for synchronization beneath the surface. Then he looked directly at Hardy, calm again, and spoke in a voice that no longer sounded fully human. You shouldn't let originals see what replaced them. All lights inside interrogation room 3 shut off simultaneously. Darkness swallowed the station, and from every shattered reflective surface, voices began whispering together. Hundreds of them, some begging to be let out, some begging not to be replaced. And among them, Hardy heard his own voice clearly say, "It's already too late for you." A reflection becomes truly dangerous the moment it stops copying reality and starts trying to permanently take reality's place instead. The blackout at the police station lasted 31 seconds, long enough for 3 officers to disappear. When emergency power returned, the station looked unchanged at first. Desks intact, computers running, hallways empty, but every reflective surface was damaged. Glass spiderwebbed with cracks, phone screens flickering strangely, security monitors showing delayed movements, and none of the missing officers were ever found. The first open mirror. Interrogation room 3 remained sealed after the incident. Only Hardy entered. The shattered observation mirror still covered the wall. But now, the cracks moved, slowly rearranging themselves like living veins beneath the glass. And in the center, the reflection no longer matched the room. Another version of the station. Hardy stepped closer carefully. Inside the mirror, the police station looked darker, older, abandoned, lights flickering weakly, blood staining the hallway floor, and people moving in the distance. Not reflections, residents. The trapped officers. One of the missing officers suddenly appeared inside the mirrored station. Officer Rahim. Alive. Panicked. He saw Hardy immediately, ran toward the glass, and slammed both hands against it. "Howdy," he screamed. "You have to close them." The sound came distorted, like hearing someone underwater. The glass bends. Hardy reached toward the mirror instinctively. The surface rippled slightly. Soft. Liquid. Then a second hand grabbed Rahim from behind inside the reflection. Another version of Rahim. Identical face. Identical uniform. But smiling. The reflection pulls him away. The smiling copy dragged Rahim backward into the dark mirrored hallway. Rahim screamed violently, fighting desperately. Then both vanished into the distorted station beyond the glass. The rules are changing. Hardy realized something terrifying. The mirrors were no longer passive. They weren't just showing alternate realities anymore. They were connecting them. Reports flood the city. By evening, calls poured into emergency lines across Bahulpur. People reporting impossible events. Reflections remaining after people walked away, mirrors showing unfamiliar rooms, family members behaving differently after looking into glass. One woman claimed her husband came home with different memories. Another insisted her daughter's reflection aged independently. The child's drawing. A teacher from a local school submitted something disturbing to police. One student had drawn dozens of mirrors connected by tunnels, and beneath them, stick figures climbing out. When questioned, the child whispered, "They said the doors are finally opening." The motel stops reflecting correctly. Back at Red Valley Motel, guests began checking out in panic, because mirrors inside the rooms started malfunctioning openly. Some reflected empty rooms while occupied. Some showed people standing where nobody existed. And room 12, the murder room, had stopped reflecting entirely. The mirror there only showed darkness now. Hardy encounters himself again. Late that night, Hardy stood alone in the motel bathroom, watching his reflection carefully. Exhausted, unshaven, terrified. Then his reflected self looked away first. Not at Hardy, at something behind him. The reflection warns him. Hardy slowly turned. Nothing there. When he looked back, his reflection spoke immediately. They've started crossing in groups. Hardy forced himself to remain still. "What are you?" The reflection answered calmly. The version that understood first. The mirror world expands. Behind reflected Hardy. The bathroom no longer matched reality. The motel appeared endless now. Hallways stretching impossibly far. Doors multiplying infinitely. And people walked through them. Thousands. Some human. Some almost human. Some wearing familiar faces incorrectly. The copies are organizing. The reflected Hardy continued speaking. "You still think this is invasion?" A pause. "It's migration." "Why they are crossing over?" "Why now?" Hardy whispered. The reflection smiled sadly. "Because your side became weak enough to merge. The core truth. Human memory. Regret. Identity. Self-perception. All of it created instability between realities. Mirrors simply revealed the fractures that already existed. And now, those fractures were widening. The first full crossing. A crash echoed from the motel lobby. Hardy rushed outside instantly. A large decorative mirror near reception had shattered outward, not inward, and standing among the broken glass was a woman covered in blood, crying hysterically. She looked up at Hardy, terrified, then whispered, "Please don't send me back." The most horrifying detail. Hardy recognized her immediately. Sarah Khan, the murder victim from room 12. Alive. Before anyone could move. All motel mirrors reflected the same image simultaneously. Not the lobby. Not the guests. A massive city made entirely of reflections. And towering above it, something enormous moving slowly between mirrored skyscrapers. Too large to fully comprehend. Watching both worlds at once. Then every mirror shattered simultaneously. At first people fear mirrors because they might reveal hidden truths. But eventually they fear them because something on the other side begins learning how to step through permanently. Sarah Khan should have been dead. Hardy had seen the body himself. Autopsy photographs. Blood evidence. DNA confirmation. And yet, she stood trembling in the motel lobby among broken glass. Alive. Breathing. Terrified. Sarah's first words. "They found a way across," she whispered. Hardy stepped toward her carefully. "Who did?" Sarah looked at every reflective surface in the lobby before answering. Even tiny shards of broken mirror. The ones who stopped remembering they were reflections. The reflection world is real. Police moved Sarah to a secured room with no mirrors. No windows. No screens. Nothing reflective. Only then did she finally calm down enough to speak. Hardy sat across from her. Notebook ready. "What is the place inside the mirrors?" Sarah stared at the floor for several seconds. Then answered quietly. "It's another version of the world. Not an exact copy." According to Sarah, the mirrored world wasn't identical to reality. It was distorted by memory, possibility, regret, fear. Buildings changed depending on who remembered them. Entire streets existed differently based on emotional attachment. And reflections there weren't reflections. They were people. The city beneath the glass. "There's a city there," Sarah whispered. "Bigger than ours." A pause. And older. How she survived. after the murders in room 12. Sarah claimed she didn't die immediately. Instead, during the struggle, she fell through the bathroom mirror. Not metaphorically, physically, into the reflection world. The other side. Hardy listened silently as Sarah described it. Endless mirrored versions of real locations. Motels repeating infinitely. Highways leading nowhere. Cities built from overlapping memories. And everywhere, people who looked familiar, but not quite correct. The reflection citizens. Some reflections were harmless, confused, lost. Others had stopped seeing themselves as copies long ago. Those were the dangerous ones. Because they wanted permanence. The giant thing in the mirrors. Hardy leaned forward slightly. What was that thing we saw? Sarah's expression changed instantly. Fear deeper than panic. We don't know what it is. A pause. But everything there is afraid of it. The Watcher. In the reflection world. Something massive moved between mirrored cities. Watching. Searching. And whenever it appeared, reflections started behaving strangely. More aggressive. More unstable. More desperate to cross into reality. The truth about the murders. Imran didn't kill Sarah. Not originally. According to Sarah, the copies manipulated them into turning against each other. Because strong emotional trauma weakened mirrors further. Fear. Violence. Identity collapse. All of it opened crossings. The real Imran. He's still alive over there, Sarah whispered suddenly. Hardy looked up sharply. What? The real one. A pause. The copy is the one that died in room 12. The impossible switch. Hardy's stomach tightened. That meant the body police buried might never have been the original Imran Ali at all. And worse, nobody could reliably tell the difference in him all. The reflection storm begins. At 11:43 p.m. Every television inside the motel turned on simultaneously. Static filled the screens. Then images appeared. Not broadcasts. Live footage. The reflection city. The mirrored Karachi. Hardy recognized it instantly. A version of Karachi made entirely from reflective surfaces. Skyscrapers of glass. Roads shimmering like liquid mirrors. Thousands of shadow-like people moving beneath silver streetlights. And in the center, something enormous watching the city from above. The Watcher notices them. The giant thing suddenly stopped moving. Then slowly turned toward the screens. Toward them. Even through the distorted footage. Hardy felt it, noticing the real world. The broadcast changes. All television screens displayed the same sentence. Crossing phase has begun. Then another line appeared underneath. Prepare for synchronization. Sarah breaks down. No. Sarah whispered repeatedly. They've never tried this before. Hardy grabbed her shoulders. What does synchronization mean? Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. It means both worlds stop staying separate. Reflections appear everywhere. Outside the motel, car mirrors began showing delayed movement. Shop windows reflected alternate streets. Phone cameras captured extra people standing behind users. The boundary between worlds was thinning everywhere simultaneously. The most disturbing discovery. One officer reviewing city CCTV footage found something horrifying. In many reflections, people were already missing. Not in reality, only in mirrors. As though reflections had begun replacing them in advance. Hardy entered the motel bathroom one final time before dawn. The cracked mirror above the sink reflected him normally. For now. Then slowly, another version of Hardy stepped into view behind his reflection. Not threatening, not smiling, just exhausted. And before fading again, the reflected copy whispered, "You still don't understand." A pause. Your world is the smaller one. The terrifying part about discovering another reality isn't learning that it exists. It's learning that the people on the other side may already consider your world the reflection instead of theirs. Hardy didn't tell anyone what his reflection said, because once the thought entered his mind, it refused to leave. Your world is the smaller one. The sentence infected everything afterward. Every mirror, every conversation, every memory. What if reality had always been reversed? The first synchronization event. At 8:14 a.m., the first full overlap occurred in downtown Karachi. Hundreds witnessed it. None described it the same way. For exactly 19 seconds, two versions of the same street occupied the same space. Cars passed through each other. Buildings overlapped incorrectly. People saw alternate versions of themselves walking nearby. Then reality separated again violently, leaving 12 people missing, and 5 others claiming they had returned from the wrong side. The survivor. One of the survivors was brought directly to Hardy, a teenage boy named Armin. Catatonic, shaking uncontrollably. He only repeated one sentence over and over. There were more people there than here. The population problem. Sarah finally admitted something she had hidden. The reflection world wasn't empty. It was populated by billions. Entire societies existed there. Cities, governments, histories, and according to them, the real world had been appearing in reflections for decades. Who copied who? Hardy paced the motel room silently, trying to hold on to logic. But one side had to come first. Sarah looked at him carefully. That's what both worlds believe. The historical records. Researchers began discovering impossible contradictions. Old photographs changing over time. Archived security footage showing extra people. Historical records that no longer matched public memory. And worst of all, certain individuals existed in one set of records but not another. Reality itself was becoming historically unstable. The reflection version of Earth. Sarah described the mirrored world in greater detail now. It wasn't simply evil. It wasn't monsters. It was humanity, just altered by endless layers of reflection and alternate possibility. Some people there had lived completely different lives. Some cities never experienced wars. Others collapsed decades earlier. And over centuries, the worlds drifted further apart. The Watcher returns. At sunset, every reflective surface in the motel darkened simultaneously. Mirrors, phone screens, windows, even polished metal. And within them, the giant entity appeared again, massive beyond scale, its shape constantly shifting, sometimes human-like, sometimes architectural, sometimes impossible to comprehend at all. The name, for the first time, text appeared beneath the reflections. One word repeated endlessly. The Observer. What the Observer does. Sarah looked terrified. It watches unstable realities. Hardy frowned. Why? She swallowed hard. To determine which version survives synchronization. The worst revelation yet. The Observer wasn't invading. It was evaluating. Comparing both worlds. Watching which reality remained more internally stable. And whichever world lost coherence first would become absorbed into the other. Human identity starts breaking. Synchronization events increased overnight. People waking with conflicting memories. Families disagreeing about entire lifetimes. Children recognizing strangers as parents. Some people physically changed after looking into mirrors too long. Not dramatically. Subtly. Eye colors shifting. Scars appearing from lives never lived. Voices changing tone. The station incident. At a police station outside Lahore. An officer looked into a bathroom mirror for 14 uninterrupted minutes. Co-workers later found 2 versions of him arguing inside the restroom. Only one emerged alive, and nobody could determine which version survived. Hardy begins forgetting. Hardy noticed it himself eventually. Small inconsistencies. He remembered owning a dog he never had. He recognized streets he'd never visited. He dreamed about a childhood apartment that didn't exist in this world. Or perhaps didn't exist anymore. The reflection copy appears again. That night, Hardy's reflection finally spoke before he did. Not delayed. Not distorted. Independent. The reflected version leaned closer to the glass. Tired. Almost sympathetic. You're beginning to synchronize. Hardy stared back coldly. What happens if both realities merge completely? The reflection hesitated, then answered softly. One of them stops being remembered. The meaning of death changes. Hardy understood instantly. The losing world wouldn't explode. Wouldn't collapse. It would simply become forgotten. Overwritten. Like a reflection fading when nobody looks at it anymore. Sarah's final secret. Before midnight, Sarah confessed the truth she feared most. There's another version of you there, she whispered. Hardy remained silent. He's helping them. Why? Sarah looked toward the motel mirror nervously. Because he believes this world is the copy. At 2:13 a.m., Every mirror inside the Red Valley Motel reflected the same image. Two earths suspended in darkness, slowly moving toward each other, and between them, the observer watching silently, waiting, judging. Then, one of the reflected earths flickered slightly, like a failing memory. The fear of losing reality becomes unbearable when you realize the universe may not destroy your world violently. It may simply decide to remember a different version of existence instead. The first people to disappear completely were the ones who lived alone. No witnesses, no immediate panic, just small absences. An apartment suddenly occupied by someone else. A workplace insisting an employee had always been different. Neighbors remembering another face entirely. Reality wasn't collapsing loudly anymore. It was editing itself carefully. The teacher from apartment 44. A school teacher named Yasmin disappeared on a Tuesday morning. Except, according to half the building, she never existed. The other half remembered her perfectly. Photographs became unstable. Some showed Yasmin standing beside co-workers. Others showed an entirely different woman in her place. And by evening, even her nameplate outside apartment 44 had changed. Hardy investigates the apartment. The apartment felt lived in. Warm tea still sitting on the table. Books open beside the bed. Television running softly. But family photos shifted whenever Hardy looked away. In one picture, Yasmin smiled beside her parents. In another, a stranger stood there instead. The mirror in the hallway. The apartment hallway mirror reflected something worse. Not the apartment. Another version of it. Older, decayed, abandoned, and standing inside reflected apartment 44. Was Yasmin. Watching silently. She tries to speak. Yasmin pressed trembling hands against the inside of the glass, trying desperately to say something. But another woman entered the reflected apartment behind her. The woman now replacing her in reality. And the moment the replacement saw Yasmin, the reflection distorted violently, then went dark. Quiet replacement. That became the pattern. No mass invasions. No dramatic attacks. People were simply being rewritten. One by one. Quietly. And the world adapted immediately afterward. The human mind adjusts too easily. Psychologists across the country began reporting a horrifying trend. Human memory resisted contradictions for only a short time. Eventually, the brain accepted replacement histories automatically. Entire families forgot original loved ones within days. Reality didn't need to force people to adapt. Human minds did it naturally to survive. Sarah starts changing. Sarah became quieter, more distant. Sometimes she remembered events differently mid-conversation. Sometimes she spoke about places Hardy had never heard of. And twice, Hardy caught her reflection moving after she stopped. The reflection scar. One morning, a scar appeared across Sarah's wrist. Fresh, deep. She stared at it in confusion. That didn't happen here, she whispered. The boundaries collapsed further. Synchronization events now lasted minutes instead of seconds. Entire neighborhoods overlapped with reflection world versions temporarily. People crossed accidentally without realizing it. A child vanished from a shopping mall, then returned hours later speaking about the brighter city. An old man came home to find his wife replaced by a version 20 years younger. And increasingly, nobody could prove which version belonged originally. The observer descends lower. The giant entity began appearing closer in reflections now. No longer distant. People saw fragments of it moving between mirrored skyscrapers. Its shadow crossing windows. Its shape towering behind reflected cities. And whenever it appeared, replacements accelerated. Hardy meets his other self. At last, the reflection version of Hardy crossed over fully. It happened inside the motel bathroom. No dramatic portal. No explosion. One moment the reflection stood inside the mirror. The next, he stepped out quietly onto the tile floor. Same face. Same voice. Same exhausted eyes. But calmer. More certain. The other Hardy speaks. I asked them not to choose this world, he said softly. Hardy raised his weapon instantly. The other version barely reacted. You still think survival means originality. The difference between them. The reflection Hardy remembered different events. Different childhoods. Different losses. But emotionally, he felt real. Completely human. which terrified Hadi more than monsters ever could. The question, which one of us is the copy? Hadi asked finally. The other Hadi smiled sadly. That depends on which reality survives synchronization. The hidden truth about the observer. The reflection version revealed something catastrophic. The observer did not create the merging. Humanity did. Every regret, every imagined alternate life, every reflection people stared into wondering what could have been, gradually weakened the separation between worlds. The observer merely arrived once the fracture became irreversible. What the observer actually is. It's not a creature, the other Hadi whispered. It's a process. A pause. The universe deciding which version of reality remains coherent enough to continue. Before dawn, every mirror in Karachi reflected the same horrifying image. Not the city. An empty earth. Silent. Dark. Abandoned. One reality after synchronization finished completely. Then the mirrors changed again. Now showing crowded streets full of unfamiliar people living normal lives. A replacement civilization continuing without anyone remembering the original world at all. The cruelest part of being replaced isn't dying. It's realizing the world can continue functioning perfectly afterward without remembering you were ever there in the first place. The first major city to vanish from memory was Hyderabad. Not physically. The buildings still stood. The roads still existed. People still lived there. But slowly, the rest of the country stopped remembering it correctly. Maps changed overnight. History books contradicted themselves. Entire populations disagreed about where the city had always been located. And within 2 weeks, some people swore Hyderabad had never existed at all. The memory collapsed. Hadi realized the synchronization was entering its final stage. Reality was no longer replacing individuals. It was replacing certainty itself. People lose their own histories. Hospitals became overwhelmed. Not with injuries, with confusion. People waking beside spouses they didn't recognize. Children insisting they belonged to different families. Citizens remembering entirely different governments and historical events. And every conflicting memory came with evidence. Photographs, documents, news archives. No version could fully disprove the others anymore. The most dangerous places. Mirrors became active crossing points permanently. Police ordered reflective surfaces covered nationwide. But it no longer mattered. Windows worked. Water worked. Dark phone screens worked. Even human eyes occasionally reflected alternate realities during moments of emotional stress. Sa'a begins disappearing. Hadi found Sa'a sitting alone inside the motel room late one night. She looked transparent in dim light now. Not physically fading. Misaligned. Like reality struggled to keep her synchronized. She smiled weakly when he entered. I think my world is losing. What happens to the losing reality? Hadi sat across from her silently. What happens when a reality loses completely? Sa'a looked toward the dark motel window. Nobody dies. A pause. They just stop being remembered by existence. The observer appears in the sky. At 3:33 a.m., people across multiple cities reported the same impossible sight. The sky reflecting another sky. Clouds overlapping incorrectly. Stars appearing where none should exist. And within the reflection above the world, the observer finally became fully visible. Massive beyond comprehension. A shifting structure made from countless mirrored fragments. And inside every fragment, different versions of humanity living different lives. The observer is choosing. The reflection version of Hadi appeared again shortly afterward. This time exhausted. Afraid even. It's accelerating, he whispered. Hadi frowned. What decides which world survives? The other Hadi hesitated, then answered quietly. Consistency. Why their world is failing. The reflection world had one advantage. Its people already accepted multiplicity. Alternate identities, overlapping realities, but the original world resisted contradiction, and resistance created instability. The harder people fought replacement, the weaker reality became. The final psychological shift. Governments stopped trying to restore the old world, because populations couldn't agree on what original even meant anymore. Instead, new laws emerged. Citizens were advised. Never confront alternate versions of loved ones. Avoid discussing conflicting memories. Publicly accept synchronized identities peacefully. Humanity wasn't defeating the merge. It was adapting to survive inside it. Hardy forgets his mother. The moment finally came unexpectedly. Hardy stared at an old childhood photograph, and suddenly realized he couldn't remember his mother's face anymore. The woman in the picture felt unfamiliar. Wrong somehow. Then the image shifted subtly, now showing a different woman smiling beside him as a child. And part of Hardy's mind accepted it instantly. That terrified him more than anything else. Sarah's final truth. Sarah admitted something she had hidden from the beginning. There was never only two realities, she whispered. Hardy looked at her sharply. There are countless versions. A pause. The synchronization is collapsing them into fewer stable outcomes. The endless reflections. Every mirror connected not to one alternate world, but to infinite overlapping possibilities. Some nearly identical, some horrifyingly different. And now the universe itself was compressing them together. The last stable motel room, room 12, became the center of the collapse. Unlike other mirrors, the bathroom mirror there no longer reflected anything at all. Only darkness. Depthless. Infinite. The reflection version of Hardy stared into it silently, then whispered, "This is where realities merge permanently." The choice. For the first time. The other Hardy looked uncertain. "If one version of us enters first," he said quietly, "the observer may stabilize around that identity." Hardy understood immediately. One of them might determine which reality survived. As dawn approached, people across the world suddenly paused simultaneously. Thousands. Millions. Because for one impossible second, everyone saw alternate versions of themselves standing nearby. Different ages. Different lives. Different choices. And among those infinite overlapping selves, most people could no longer identify which version they originally were. Reality truly begins collapsing the moment human beings lose the ability to distinguish memory from possibility, because after that, existence can be rewritten without anyone realizing what was taken away. The final synchronization began at sunrise. No explosions, no sirens, no collapse of cities. The world simply started overlapping completely. Buildings existed in multiple forms simultaneously. People remembered several lives at once. Roads changed while cars drove across them. And everywhere, reflections stopped behaving like reflections entirely, because there was no longer a clear distinction between worlds. Room 12. Hardy entered the motel room alone. The bathroom mirror had become perfectly black now. No reflection, no light, only depth. Behind him stood Sarah, and the other Hardy. Three versions of reality sharing the same room. Sarah's final moments. Sarah looked weaker than ever, almost translucent now. "The observer is close to deciding," she whispered. Hardy looked toward the dark mirror. "What happens when it chooses?" The reflection, Hardy answered quietly. "One reality becomes dominant." A pause. The others continue only as fragments inside memory. Not destruction. That was the cruelest part. No apocalypse would follow. No ruins. No evidence. The losing worlds would simply fade into unreality, while the surviving version rewrote history as though it had always been the only one. The observer arrives. Every reflective surface in the motel darkened simultaneously. Then, the observer appeared fully for the first time. Not a monster. Not exactly. A structure made from infinite overlapping human reflections. Billions of faces. Billions of lives. Billions of unrealized possibilities compressed together into one impossible intelligence. Humanity's collective alternate selves. Watching. Judging. Remembering. The true purpose. Hardy finally understood. The observer wasn't choosing realities randomly. It existed to prevent infinite fractured worlds from collapsing existence entirely. Synchronization was correction. Cruel. Necessary. The final question. The observer spoke without words, directly into their minds. Which version continues? The other Hardy steps forward. The reflection version looked toward the dark mirror, then toward Hardy. "Our world adapted first," he whispered. A pause. "Yours kept denying what it was becoming." Hardy understands the real difference. The reflection world survived contradictions because its people accepted unstable identity. But Hardy's world depended on certainty, originality, singular truth. And once certainty broke, Reality itself became fragile. Sa'a makes her choice. To Hardy's shock, Sa'a stepped toward the reflection Hardy instead. You remember more people, she whispered tearfully. The statement sounded small, but it meant everything. The reflection world carried more surviving possibilities, more preserved lives, more retained versions of humanity. The last resistance. Part of Hardy wanted to fight, to insist his world was real, original, but another part finally understood the terrifying truth. Every reality believed itself original, and none could ever truly prove it. The mirror opens fully. The black surface inside room 12 expanded outward silently, covering walls, floor, ceiling, and beyond it, Hardy saw countless Earths overlapping infinitely. Different histories, different outcomes, different human civilizations branching endlessly through possibility, all collapsing slowly toward singularity. The decision. The observer focused on Hardy one final time, and for the first time, he realized it wasn't asking for a correct answer, only acceptance. Hardy steps forward. Slowly, Hardy lowered his weapon, then stepped toward the dark reflection, not resisting, not surrendering, accepting uncertainty. And the moment he touched the surface, every memory inside him exploded outward. Different childhoods, different parents, different cities, different lives, thousands of possible versions of himself existing simultaneously, and none more real than the others. The synchronization completes. At exactly 8:08 a.m., the overlap ended. The world stabilized. Only one coherent reality remained fully remembered. 1 year later, Karachi thrived. Bustling streets, crowded markets, normal life. People no longer spoke about synchronization events. Most didn't remember them clearly anymore. But mirrors still made some citizens uncomfortable. And occasionally, someone would encounter a photograph that looked subtly wrong, a memory that didn't align completely, a stranger who felt strangely familiar. Detective Hardy Malik. In the surviving reality, Detective Hardy Malik lived alone in a small apartment overlooking the city. He no longer investigated mirror incidents. Officially, they never happened. Yet every morning, he avoided looking directly into reflective surfaces for too long. Because sometimes, his reflection hesitated before copying him. Late one night, Hardy stood before his bathroom mirror in darkness. For several seconds, nothing unusual happened. Then, his reflection smiled sadly and whispered, "You still remember us?" The lights went out instantly, and somewhere very far away, something enormous continued watching through every reflective surface humanity would ever create. People fear mirrors because they might reveal hidden truths. But the oldest fear comes from something deeper. The suspicion that the person staring back may belong to a different version of reality that was never completely erased.